will fight till the end. Doesn't matter what the world brings against me. I will fight till the end. Doesn't matter what people say. I will love till the end.
Thanks for joining us today on WNTW 820 AM The Answer. This is Cut to the Chase with Senator Amanda Chase, and I am Senator Amanda Chase, your humble servant here serving you in the 11th Senatorial District, which includes most of Chesterfield, Amelia, and Colonial Heights. And this is your weekly town hall. This is for you, my constituents in this whole area. And I understand that our district, you can actually hear us all the way in Amelia to Williamsburg. Many of you are listening today. And I want to tell you, I am not a politician. I'm a citizen legislator who, this is my first year in office, and I'm determined to stay in touch with my constituents and to let you know what's really going on in the General Assembly, what's really going on in the state. And it's an honor to be here. So please continue to tune in every Thursday from 4 to 5. This is for you. I don't get paid to do this. I know a lot of people are like, wow, nice new gig or whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm doing this for you. And today is such a serious topic. I don't know if you've been following the news. The Richmond Times-Dispatch last week talked about our meeting about the GOP and how state lawmaker called for the removal of Virginia's top election official, Edgardo Cortez. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But before I do want to thank the Lee brothers for filling in for me last week. Really appreciate those guys and stepping at the last minute. So where was I last Thursday? As you remember, the week before, I told you that we had a joint meeting of the House and the Senate, and I sit on privileges and elections. We do cover elections anytime there's an issue. That's one of my committee assignments. I sit on that committee, and so it was supposed to be a 2-hour meeting, turned into a 6-hour meeting, and the purpose of that meeting was this: we were hearing from a number of our registrars, our local registrars across the state, saying we have problems. And so they wanted to voice their concerns, and we wanted to hear from them. So we called this unusual pre-election meeting to allow the registrars to voice their concerns and hear how the state is addressing them. Mind you, in less than 30 days from Election Day. Senator Jill Vogel, who is the Fauquier County Republican who chairs the Senate Elections Committee, said that the goal of the hearing was to find solutions to legitimate problems registrars are experiencing. And some registrars, she said, have said they felt uneasy about coming to Richmond to complain in full view of their state counterparts. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we discussed in that meeting. It was a time to listen. It was a time for politicians to be quiet and to listen. And that's what we did. The registrars told us about their attempt to use our system. It's called Verus, okay? And you're like, what is Verus? Many of us, wherever you work, you have an IT system that you probably go on, you log in, and you work on that system. It's your IT system. This system is what the State Board of Elections and registrars use. It's their IT systems that they use to add a voter or to check someone's status. It's usually instantaneous, but not so much is what we found out. We found out that in Chesterfield, it took officials 6 minutes to process one voter application using the systems. Several registrars said that the delays raised concern over whether the system would be able to produce the electronic poll books needed for Election Day. And if you remember, when you go in on Election Day and you vote, you are talking to an election official who asks you to repeat your name and where you live and verify that you're you. And you need to take your ID, your driver's license, your picture ID with you when you go on Election Day to vote. Well, those electronic poll books have to be pulled together and assimilated, and all the information that's been entered into Verus has to be captured and ready for the day, Election Day, so that they can check you off. And there was some question, there's some concern, will that be ready on Election Day? And so what we found, and I'm going to quote a registrar, Greg Riddlemoser, I don't know if I've got his name right. He said the high transaction volume of a presidential year, he had to hire 3 more workers. He said just, quote unquote, just to sit there and watch the spinning wheels of death Now, many of you, especially those I know who live in the rural counties, you have the situation where you try to log on to your computer and you're trying to do whatever on the internet, and it just sits there and spins, okay, with no productivity there, and that's what these registrars are dealing with. And this year, folks are going in at their DMV and they're registering to vote. And we had one of my constituents to come into the office and say, look, I registered at DMV in April, and as of a couple weeks ago, they're still not registered to vote. So this is a problem. Something else that we found out is that there were 20 dead people registered to vote in Harrisonburg. And we just happened to discover this because of a very conscientious registrar. Officials said it involved an employee of a third-party organization group using fake Social Security numbers. This is a problem. And it just happened to be that they knew the person had been deceased. It was someone everyone knew. And they said, this just can't be. And lo and behold, they found that 20 people were registered to vote that were no longer living. They were dead people being registered to vote. And so we're just wondering, how prevalent is this? We just happened to find this out on a fluke. And so, we listened to registrar after registrar after registrar. And so we really want to get to the bottom of this. Today, on the phone, we have Clarabelle Wheeler. She is a GOP member of the State Board of Elections. She is actually calling in on the phone today. She's the vice president. Did I get this right? Vice president. Sorry about that. I'm elevating you to a new level.
I love it.
I'm really wanting to cut to the chase here and give you the microphone here and let you tell folks the facts about what you're seeing. Does it trouble you that there is a discrepancy, first of all, between what the registrars are saying and our very own Commissioner Cortez, who indicates that everything is fine?
Senator Chase, let me thank you for inviting me to be on your show, because it's always important to be able to disseminate information that's factual, and that's what you're doing. In listening to your opening statement, you said one of the most important statements I've ever heard a member of any legislative body say, and the really good ones say it a lot, and that is a time to listen. I mean, we can drop back into Ecclesiastes. There is a time to listen and a time to speak. And you hit it on the head. The members of the state Senate and House of Delegates all realized that they needed to stop, take a time out, take the time from their busy schedules, convene a meeting in Richmond, and listen to what the people who are on the ground trying to get elections to happen in an orderly fashion in Virginia. That would be the general registrars, the electoral board members, and the Department of Elections. And it is a team effort. Everybody has to work together to let the elections go forward. And there has been so much trouble and delay and problems that the general registrars felt that they really could not do their jobs. And so they prevailed on the members of the General Assembly that they knew, and the chairman and the members of these two committees, the Privileges and Elections Committee, did something that was absolutely unprecedented. The General Assembly, as we all know, a little bit of history here, began as the House of Burgesses in Jamestown in 1619. And the first committee that was taken out of that General Assembly, or that House of Burgesses, was the Privileges and Elections Committee. And since that time, never has there been such a problem before the elections community that those two bodies, the Senate and the House, Privileges and Elections Committees, have felt the need to convene a meeting when the General Assembly was not in session to hear the problems. I commend both houses, both committees, for having the good sense to all come together and listen to the facts. And you were part of that. So we need to thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that, Clarabelle. And, one of the things that I've really tried to accomplish with this show is to just no spin, give people the facts, and let them make up their own mind as to what's going on, but to give them the facts. We have about 30 seconds before we go to a break. When we come back, and I want you all to stick around because I want you to understand Clarabelle's role, because when we come back, I don't know, a lot of people aren't as familiar as we are because we're in the mix, but we're talking to people all over the state who are saying, you know, what is the State Board of Elections? What do they do? You know, the top 3 people. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about that and cut to the chase. Stay tuned. Clarabelle, stay on the line, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
The Chesterfield.
Hello?
Hold on one sec.
Okay, good. Sure.
If my heart is overwhelmed and I cannot hear your voice, I hold on to what is true, though I cannot see. And if the storms of life they come.
Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. You are tuning in to WNTW AM 820, and we are talking about the Virginia Department of Elections, the State Board of Elections, and voter concerns. I'm getting so many concerned voters. I myself am a concerned voter, and I have on the line here Clarabelle Wheeler. She's the GOP member of the State Board of Elections. And Clarabelle, before we go much further, I want people to really understand where exactly you are. Explain to them the board where you sit and kind of the structure so people can understand kind of where you sit.
Well, you are cutting to the chase, Senator. People need to know the facts. If they don't know the structure of our legal and our government systems, they don't know how to work within those systems in an effective and functional manner. Every electoral community, that means every locality within Virginia, of which there are 133, is divided into either cities or counties, and they each have a registrar. Each of them has a registrar, who is also called the Director of Elections. With that registrar is an electoral board comprised of 3 people. The state is much the same way. We have a director of the commissioner of the Department of Elections and a State Board of Elections. There are 3 people on the State Board of Elections who are appointed technically by the governor. They are by code to represent both of the major parties, the parties who received the largest number of ballots in the previous gubernatorial election. The party who won the gubernatorial election gets 2 representatives. The party who came in second gets 1 representative. And that transfers to all the electoral boards. So right now, there is Terry McAuliffe is a Democrat. So there are 2 Democrats on the State Board of Elections and 2 Democrats on every electoral board at the locality and 1 Republican. The watchword is that when you are appointed to an electoral board or the state board, you certainly come in with your own concept of how government should work because you are a party representative. But once you're appointed to that board, you're supposed to take off your party hat. You check it at the door. You talk politics when you go outside. You can go to rallies. You can have fundraisers. You can make donations. You can act the same as any other responsible citizen. But when you're functioning as a member of that board, you are apartisan, nonpartisan. And you look to the laws that govern the Commonwealth, which you as a member of the General Assembly establish, and you try to do what is right for the voters of Virginia. So that's who. So I'm on the state board. Before I got to the state board, I was on the Albemarle County Electoral Board, and before that, I was an officer of election, and I would have to take a few seconds out here from this discussion to encourage your listeners to go to your registrar's offices and volunteer to be election officers. This is a paid, the election officers get paid, not a lot, but it's something. It's a long day, but we need good, responsible election officers to administer the election day proceedings. So if any of your listeners can take off the day from their job, or maybe they're retired, or they don't have to be somewhere on Tuesday, November the 8th, go volunteer to be an election officer. We still need election officers. That's
Absolutely.
not today.
I'm sure Larry Hakey would greatly appreciate that, And so let's break this down for folks. You're one of the top 3 of this in the State Board of Elections. You're one of 3. Who are the other 2, the Democratic representatives?
The chairman is James Alcorn. He's from Richmond. And the other is Sinclair McAllister, and she is from Northern Virginia.
Okay. And then, of course, we have, as the head of that, the commissioner of the State Board of Elections, and that would be Edgardo Cortez.
Correct.
So I just want I want our listeners to kind of understand, because a lot of times, we see what's going on in the news and we just get mad and we just start, we have people on the inside, the way the system is designed, that should be looking. So at every single polling precinct, are you saying then that we should have 2 Democrats and a Republican looking as the votes are being counted? Is that kind of how you want to explain that to folks, kind of how that works?
That's a good place to start. Every polling place has a number of officers of elections, depending upon how many registered voters there are. You may not have more than 5,000 registered voters in any precinct. If you have more than 5,000 in that geographic area, then it needs to be divided by code. The code says that's all you can have. So suppose you've got 4,500 registered voters. You're going to need a lot of election officers in that precinct to handle the flow, to keep the lines moving, to make sure everybody's questions are answered, that you have election officers running the poll books, whether they are paper poll books or electronic laptop poll books. You have election officers at the voting machines, whether they are the optical scan paper ballots or whether they're the punch screen, the old DREs that are still in use. And then you may even have, in some polling places, a greeter. We sort of adopted the Walmart. You've got to get people. So when people come into the polling place, if you've got enough election officers, there'll be a greeter to help you know where you need to go.
So people should still come out and vote, and when they vote, they need to bring their ID. They need to bring
their
ID. Absolutely, their photo ID. Now, I'm going to cut to the chase because I know we've got like a few minutes here left. But last week at that committee hearing, we talked about provisional ballots. And folks, this is the ballot that people are given when they go to the registrar. They're like, oh, I forgot my wallet or whatever. For whatever reason, they can cast one of these provisional ballots. And
there are 2 types.
Yeah, explain that. We've got like a
minute. There are 2 types of provisional ballot. One is ID only. That means you forgot to bring your photo ID with you. Perfect. So you fill out this ballot, you vote a ballot, you fold it up, you put it in an envelope, you sign it, you put your name on it. The officer of election signs it. They give you instructions on how to send back a copy of your photo ID. And you can send it back electronically or fax it or bring a copy to the registrar's office. Okay, that's photo ID. There are lots of other reasons why you may need to do a provisional ballot. Your name does not appear in the electronic poll book or the paper poll book. You think you've registered, but it doesn't show up. You've moved, and you're not sure whether you moved too long ago to vote in the same old precinct where you live. You may only vote in a precinct where you are registered. It doesn't matter how long ago you moved or didn't move.
Clarabelle, I'm going to cut in here just a second because we've got like 30 seconds, and I want you to actually stay on after the break. But I want people to hear what you said at that meeting about the thousands of provisional ballots that were mailed out to the registrars and the concerns. Is the administration anticipating a huge disaster for Election Day? I want Clarabelle to answer that question for me. When we get back, stay tuned.
I will fight till the end. Doesn't matter what the world brings against me. I will fight till the end. Doesn't matter what people say. I will love till the end, even as the love grows cold.
So welcome back to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. I'm your Virginia State Senator, Amanda Chase, and I have Clarabelle Wheeler, who is a GOP member of the State Board of Elections. And I just want to make a note that the state has prepared 1 million provisional ballots. And Clarabelle brought this up. Commissioner Revenue, I actually asked him to go back and answer the question that was asked of him when I said, compared to 4 years ago, are you providing more provisional ballots than you did 4 years ago? And he said yes. I finally got him to say yes. And officials are simply preparing for all contingencies. But Clarabelle Wheeler said she sees it as a sign that the state knows it's going to need a lot of backup. She says that tells me that somebody's trying to get ready for a disaster. The Department of Elections is clearly worried that something is going to go wrong, and we need to know what that is. And as we have seen this week, Clarabelle, in the news, what happened, the breakdown of the state's online voter registration system Sunday and Monday kept residents from signing up before the shutoff at 11:59 p.m. Wednesday. And I just want to point out to folks, some people we're talking about this on Facebook, and I'm trying to tell people, yes, people can wait till the last minute, but this has been going on all summer. People trying to register to vote, and they can't do it because we have a system that does not work. It's slowing down. It's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, much like when you get on the internet at home and the system is overloaded and it's not working properly. So this is the problem. So let's address that today. What do you think, Clarabelle, is going on? We talked about the ACLU had filed a suit after the cutoff saying, that we've got all these people that want to register to vote. They can't. The ACLU sues. They come back. The federal court came back, ruled extending the voter registration until tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And by the way, if you have not registered to vote, you have till midnight to vote online, but you have until 5 o'clock to go to your registrar's office and register to vote. So all these pieces are coming together since we last talked, Clarabelle. Tell us your thoughts on what you think. What is really going on here?
I wish I knew, actually. This is one of those times when you think you start doing your investigative journalism as you're doing today and your investigative responsible citizenship. A lot of the general registrars who spoke with you and who spoke at the meeting are also very concerned. In the past, for instance, Harrisonburg, Virginia has 27,000 roughly. They've probably got more than that now. But last year, before this summer, they had 27,000 registered voters. They have never in the history of Harrisonburg had more than 115 total provisional ballots in any one given election. The state sent them 10,000 provisional ballot envelopes. Fairfax County, humongous, 1/7 of all registered voters in Virginia are in Fairfax. They received 260,500 provisional ballots.
And how many do they normally get? How many does Fairfax normally get?
I think they had 2,000 in the last presidential.
Wow.
So 100 times? They've got 100,000 times, excuse me.
Sounds a little suspicious.
You got to wonder. Somebody knows something that the rest of us may or may not understand. The electronic poll books, and this is something that's really important, and one of the things that the registrars said to you at the meeting. When the electronic and paper poll books have to be put together, the registrars only have between close of books on Saturday, because you can do in-person absentee voting in a registrar's office until 5 o'clock by code the Saturday before the election. The poll books need to be distributed to the chief election officers, about whom we earlier spoke, to take to the polling places, and those go out on Monday. So the registrar's offices have from 5 p.m. on Saturday afternoon until 9 o'clock Monday morning to put their poll books together. The poll books are the mechanism by which election officers know whether someone's registered to vote in that precinct or whether they're registered to vote in the county. And if they're not either place, they call the registrar's office, and the registrar can look up in VERIS, the Virginia Elections and Registration Information System, whether or not that person's name appears in any registration list anywhere in Virginia. Now, if the registrars can't properly put together their poll books, either electronically or paper, in that window on Saturday to Monday, what are they going to do?
Well, stay
Are they
tuned.
going to
Claire
have-
Bell, you stay right there. We're going to be back. We've got another hard break here. We'll be back in like 4 minutes. Stay tuned for the rest of the answer.
Here I go, I'm on my way with my love glasses on, got my love glasses on. Here I go, I'm on my way, I see more clearly and I feel strong.
Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. This is Virginia State Senator Amanda Chase, and on the phone today, I am so excited to have Claire Bell Wheeler, who is a GOP member of the State Board of Elections, one of three, right there at the top. And we were talking right before the break about the number of provisional ballots that have been issued, extremely high amount for each of the cities and the counties. We also talked about the concern, will the electronic poll books be ready? Because we have a short window of time to get those ready and get them to the registrars so that they're ready for Election Day. And one thing that I want to back up and talk about, Virginia has actually switched from paperwork to an online voter registration system, and I really want to, Claire Bell, kind of focus on that. Could you talk to our listeners today? This is the same. We were using VERIS back at the last presidential election, but walk us through that progression that we were talking about earlier today about how we brought that in-house.
We brought this in-house sometime before 2007. It was run, before 2007, the VERIS system was operated by an organization, a contract organization called Quest. And they operated, maintained, designed, etc. And over the years, the Department of Elections felt that they could do it, that the in-house Department of Elections could handle the system better than a contractor. So in about 2013, 2014, I'm not absolutely certain of exactly the month that it transferred, but it was taken away from Quest and brought in-house and operated, controlled, developed, changed within the Department of Elections. And so everything that is done to VERIS is done by the Department of Elections. In about a year and a half ago, Virginia decided, the Department of Elections, to go with not only the paper registration for voting system, but an electronic online system, so that the online system through the, quote, citizens portal, that means a citizen can enter VERIS, register to fill out an application to register to vote, or fill out an application to get an absentee ballot. Both of these have been well received by the citizens. They like being able to do this, at home at 3 o'clock in the morning and not have to go to the registrar's office. The downside is it's been really liked by the citizens, and consequently, lots of people are doing this. It's a very difficult system to make certain that it works properly, because the Code of Virginia requires that you have a signature either on a registration application or on a request for an absentee ballot. And so in order to do this online and have a signature, the Department of Election devised a computer transfer so that a person fills out the application with a DMV, Division of Motor Vehicle number, which is not your Social Security number. You have to put your Social Security number on either of these applications for registration or for an absentee ballot. But you also need the DMV number, because then when you submit online, the electronic system at Veris transfers that application to the DMV, which has a wet signature, an actual cursive signature that you have signed when you either registered your car to have a registered car or get a driver's license.
And that
Something
did not
being
transfer
done.
over, did it? Because we had, and that's when we had all these people registering to vote. They were going to DMV. They're signing up. They're saying, it says, prompts them, do you want to register to vote? They said yes. But what's not transferring over to the registrars, as you said, is the signature and the Social Security number.
On the same screen, yes. They're coming back to the registrars in separate screens, in separate logs, so that when a registrar gets an application, which should have the full Social Security and the signature and the date of birth and the name and the address right there on one screen, so the registrar can process and check in Veris to make sure that person's not already registered someplace else. All the information is not on one screen, and the registrars have to go hunting to find all the information. So
Clara, we've got like 2 minutes left, so I really want to make sure people understand like the correlation between basically us going from the paperwork system to the online system. That's why we're kind of seeing these problems bubble up, if you will, over
that's
the
exactly
summer.
why we're seeing it, because people are using the online system. The online system isn't working. Veris is being overloaded. I would like to say maybe this is a case of too big not to fail, and it's been failing since before the presidential primary. One person put in 58 repetitive duplicate applications, 58, because the screen didn't say, stop, we've got your registration, wait a few days, check with your registrar, you don't need to hit the screen again, we got it. Just the same as if you're buying something online from any business.
Mm-hmm.
It tells you, here's your confirmation number, we've got your application, don't do anything else.
So
Veris didn't do that.
So I think it's fair to say that we have a system that somewhat worked, but now we've got Facebook and Google Alerts reminding Virginians to register to vote. We have a number of people who normally weren't registered to vote who are registering to vote, which is a good thing because we want more people to vote, and I'm all for that. But we have a system that is not able to keep up with the demands, and we have registrars who can't do their basic functions because the system is so overloaded. And so I'm just going to cut to the chase here and say, I know Donald Trump yesterday was saying the system is rigged. Do you think the system's rigged?
I think we have a lot of voter fraud, and I think we have a lot of people registered in multiple places. We have dead people registered. We have people who've moved to other localities who are registered to vote. We have people who are registered in multiple localities. Yes, I think that the system is flawed.
And as a member of the General Assembly, I know that I personally want to call for an audit of the State Board of Elections. You have about 30 seconds. I'm going to let you finish out this segment here, and just what do you think the General Assembly should do at this point, given what we've seen?
I think we need some new laws and regulations to govern how we register, how we do balloting, how we do list maintenance. I think it is imperative that the voter registration lists are clean and accurate, which is what the Code of Virginia demands.
Amen. And we're going to follow up. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. And I have on the phone today Caucus Chairman Tim Hugo of Fairfax, great Republican who serves on Privileges and Elections in the House. We're on the opposite sides here. He serves the 40th District. And Tim, we have about 3.5 minutes left to go, and we're so glad you could join us on the wrap-up today. Let's just cut to the chase, if you will, no pun intended. What do? We have less than 27 days left to the election. We obviously have major issues with Veris. We have some issues that we were talking about in our meeting last week. What do we do at this point between now and Election Day?
Well, Amanda, between now and election day, I think we've all got to be on our toes. We've got to have people at the polls watching the polls, making sure that the right people voting. Have our poll watchers there. I think that's just incumbent upon all of us because look, you talked about it, and you were at this 5-hour marathon hearing we had. There's recordings and reports of dead people voting. 5 dead people voting in Sussex. We had obviously the JMU. All those kids were registering to vote in JMU. They weren't just registering as a fraternity prank. And then I think really, when you saw, I don't know if you saw in the House today, we put out a statement from the House leadership telling the governor, from the Speaker to the Majority Leader to myself to Jackson and Todd, Deputy Majority Leader, we said, you know what, once this election's over, you need to replace the leadership in the Department of Elections.
Yes, and I have that right in front of me, and I'm going to post it on Facebook so everybody can see. The Senate has not issued a statement at this point, but the House has, and we're going to have that online. And so we need to send people to the registrar. The registrars are really trying to protect the integrity of the vote. I mean, that was my takeaway, is they're concerned too. We had all these...
Yeah, and absolutely, and people need to be poll watchers. And that's, I know all the, the Republicans and the conservatives, they always ask for poll watchers. Volunteer this year.
What is a poll watcher? Some of our listeners may be like, what is a poll watcher? I want to be one. What do I do?
You go to the polls and you sit behind the people that checking in. And if something doesn't look right, you have the right to say, hey, may I ask about that? And you're polite and respectful. But there's people like that, and they do that. And they check them off. And it's important to take a look at these things. So it's also going to be important upon me and you. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to get on this next year, and I know you've been a leader on this. And for people who weren't at the hearing, Amanda Chase was on this the other day, going after what we think is a rogue Department of Elections. I think they're negligent, and people said, Amanda, that I was a little harsh when I called for his to be fired that day. Well, then a couple of days later, what happened? Veris went down.
That's exactly right.
And everything you and I talked about that day was proven right.
That's exactly right. Well, I am so glad you're in the House and that I have great partners on the House to work with. We're going to talk about this probably next week, so you guys stay tuned. There's always new developments, and they always seem to break on our show, which is incredible. And so stay tuned. Tune in next week, you all, 4 to 5. Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. Glad to have you on the show today, Delegate Tim Hugo. Join us next week, 4 to 5 on AM 820 WNTW. Thanks for joining us today.
The experts at